You're watching Ed MAGIK TV. It's magic. Keep watching.
Am I asleep? Am I awake in this American dream? Am I asleep? Am I awake in this American dream? Oh, Lord. It's simple to see it's Ed MAGIK TV, so the world can believe it's Ed MAGIK TV.
I'm here with Mitchel Delevie. Mitchel, tell me about tonight's event.
I really enjoyed Celeste's performance, and the venue is great. She's quite a rising star.
What was your impression about Celeste Kellogg?
I think she has a lot of talent. I think that she will be quite an influence on the up-and-coming Nashville and crossover markets. I'm excited to possibly produce her.
Does she remind you of anybody that you worked with?
Work with currently, no. But people I've worked with in the past, yes. She's got an old soul. If you listen to her sing, you can see she's got quite the old soul, and that's what I'm about, is old school. And when I get touched by that, I'm very interested, and that's what got me here.
What is it that you look for in an artist?
Depth. Depth, material in the sense of something emotional to move people musically. That's what I'm about as a writer and as a record producer. I try to write music that moves people and emotionally and moves people physically too, but lyrically it has to be something that has some depth, material, I call it, fabric, in other words. That's why a lot of today's music is not quite as deep as the old school, because it's the story of bandwidth growth. If you'd like to hear when I lecture to people at different colleges and things about record production, in 1980 or 1984, when I was producing Smokey Robinson, actually I was engineering with Smokey Robinson at the time, a man came to my house and gave me a cable box and said, "Look at all these 100 channels you got here." And I was like, wow, 100 channels, how cool is that? And then I started hitting them all, and they had nothing on them. And I grew up with channels 2 through 13, and in BBC in England, it was BBC 1 through 4, and in China, the same thing, and in radio, the same thing. We had 5 or 6 major channels. What that provided me and my peers is a filter or a funnel that only allowed top quality to get to visibility status. So we were only exposed to the greatness of Motown and the greatness of great acts like the Eagles and all the great acts that we grew up with, that I've had the pleasure of producing. I'm very lucky and honored that I've had the pleasure of producing some of those acts. But my point is that bandwidth growth has made so much real estate available for product that it has lowered the quality, in my opinion, of today's art, film, television, and music, to the point where it's up to old school guys like me, that are the only few that are left, to try to inject greatness into new talent, because they're products of bandwidth growth. They don't even know about, you say to a young child, what do you think of that? What do you think of Motown? And they'll go, where? Okay? So that's my one little lesson, is that you need to have some fabric that comes from the old school. And my mom was a fabulous woman that taught me about Gershwin and Porter and Jerome Kern and all the great Tin Pan Alley writers. And that's where I learned how to write songs. And to me, that's where it's at. Now, kids today, which are wonderfully talented, need a bit of education of music history, because there is so much being thrown at them, and the shelf life of these products that are out there, like an Adam Lampert, for example, who's a wonderful talent, and he had the big machine behind him, but the problem is that the material wasn't there, and the fabric that I'm talking about wasn't there, and his career lasted, a year? So I believe that people should have 5, 6, 7 years, 10 years, if they're really good. and have something to give. If they have nothing to give, their shelf life goes kaboom and they're gone.
Tell me about some of the artists that you work with.
Well, I've been very lucky to have written with Gino Vanelli, and I've worked with Gino for a long time in live production and in the studio. I've worked with Smokey Robinson for many, many years. I've worked with Randy Meisner from the Eagles for many, many years. I ran a number of recording studios when I was very young, but I was an executive. I was actually written up as the youngest record executive in A&M history because I was placed in the artist development department when I was 18 years old, and that's where I started. And after A&M for 4 years, I went to Warner Brothers Records and worked for Carl Scott, who is history. Carl Scott is one of the best in the world at artist development. He was my mentor there. Then I went back to Motown and worked for Smokey Robinson and Berry Gordy for another 10 years. I still kind of work with every one of those people, but on a sporadic basis now because I'm an independent.
We're here at the Gibson Showroom. Gibson is obviously well known for guitars. Have you ever worked with talent such as Jimmy Page, Jimi Hendrix, Eddie Van Halen?
No, actually, none of those three, but I have worked with some wonderful guitarists that work with Gibson equipment, and Gibson is some of the best equipment there is. Les Paul gave us quite a gift.
Yes, he did. Thank you very much.
My pleasure.